yes, will you die for me? And I was like, yeah, buddy, yeah, yeah. And she's like, Daddy, will you die for me those blocks? And the whole time she had just been asking for some toy.
Welcome to English with Lewis. Let's go! Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to English with Lewis. And of course, you know what's happening. We have another native English conversation between two Brits, and it's somebody who's actually living in a country that I've never visited, that I would like to visit, and I'm really interested in. I'm really curious about what it is. So today we're going to find out all about that. We're going to learn some British English vocabulary, and we're going to have a natter on, a chit chat. So let's get started. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm great, thanks. How about you?
I'm not bad. Yeah, I'm not bad, but the weather isn't the best here. It's summer now, and it's still raining every single day, and I'm a little bit fed up of it, to be honest.
I have to say, actually, it is beautiful here. It's like 30 degrees, completely blue skies, just wonderful.
Really? I thought
Mhm.
Poland had like the same weather as like Belgium, the UK, and so on.
No, I would say it's more continental, because it's quite a bit further inland. So winter is a bit colder, maybe -5, maybe about 2 weeks of snow. And then summer, I would say typical temperatures would be about 25 to 32, something like that.
Okay, interesting. I'm learning so much about Poland already. So the country is Poland. I must admit that I've never visited. I've been to Germany before, but I've never really been to any part of Eastern Europe. So, um, do you like Poland?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Warsaw is actually a really, really modern city. I think it has the fifth most skyscrapers in the European Union.
Uh-huh.
And I believe it has the tallest building in the European Union. And I would say for living, it's a great place. For example, in terms of food, there's really everything you could imagine: Georgian, Iranian, Uzbeki, Indian, Italian. There's a huge amount of vegan food. We have a beautiful river, which is becoming more and more developed. That's a really nice place to go out. So, yeah, I would really recommend paying a visit.
Okay, perfect. So, going over the big cities in Poland, you have Warsaw, you have Krakow as well. Are there any other big cities that are worth visiting?
Yeah, so the other city that I think people in the UK might know, or people internationally might know, is Gdansk, which is famous for Solidarność in the 80s, the anti-government union, Lech Wałęsa. And the other big city, which I would say is not so well known, but is very, very beautiful, and I would really recommend people to go, is Wrocław, which is in the southwest. If you don't know Polish, you probably think the city is called something like Wrocław or
Uh,
Wrocław or something like that. But the name's Wrocław, and it's also beautiful.
awesome, interesting. I'm going to learn so much today because literally my Polish knowledge and Poland knowledge is zilch. It's nothing. So, first of all, before we continue with that, why did you move to Poland and how long have you been living there now?
Oh, so long. I moved to Poland in 2015, and I moved here from Serbia. And actually, maybe a harder question is why I was living in Serbia. But actually, I really love Serbia. It's beautiful. It has fantastic mountains. It's very close to the sea. Serbian food is amazing. Serbian people are so, so friendly. So I was having a really good time there. But in terms of career, it's quite a difficult place to work, in terms of opportunities, and also in terms of visa regulations, that kind of thing. So I wanted to go somewhere with some more opportunities for work. And this, of course, is pre 2020 when everyone was working offline. And I wanted to go back into the European Union because it would just make it a bit easier for me from like the legal regulatory perspective. So I chose Warsaw quite randomly. And at that point, I was only planning to stay for maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. But then I really liked it. I met my wife. I impregnated my wife twice.
Well done. Yeah, you impregnated her. Good.
now, now here I am, 8 years later.
Fantastic. Cool, cool. Interesting because many people who I speak to on my channel are either based in the typical countries like Spain and Italy, which seems like a lot of Brits really want to be there because of the good weather, the good food that we know so much about. And then the other people I tend to connect with are really, really far away out in Japan. So today's a completely different perspective because you've been in Serbia and Poland. And I asked you why you went to Poland, but in the first place, why did you go to Serbia?
So actually, I also lived in Japan. I after university, my first teaching job was in Japan. I was working for Nova, which, if anyone knows the teaching market in Japan, you know that Nova is the worst, the single worst school
Oh, really?
in
I
Japan.
haven't heard of it. What's so bad about it?
Everything. I mean, there's like, okay, so I can tell you like one anecdote that really sets the tone for like
Okay.
my prior experience with Nova. They found a flat for me, which was pretty okay, I would say, and that was convenient. But they had in the contract that I needed to, when I left the flat, I needed to pay for the flat to be cleaned professionally, which, okay, I can understand, but the cost of the cleaning was for a 25-meter flat, the cost of the cleaning was £500. And yeah. And I remember asking, so like, okay, so if I have to pay this money to clean the flat, does that mean I can just like leave the flat? I don't have to clean it? And they were like, no, if we need to do any extra work, we'll charge you for that as well. So you need to clean it first, and then we need to clean it again once it's clean for £500. So like, there are just, I would say, low salaries, poor working conditions, all of this kind of thing. I think a lot of people come to Japan with Nova because they will hire anyone, which was me, it was my first job. But then if you stay for longer, I think you either go to a better school or you start your own business, which I think is probably what the people you've interviewed on this channel have done.
Yeah, it's interesting because usually people think that Japan is kind of like perfect in many ways, that the food is amazing, it's so clean everywhere. Now maybe we know why.
Absolutely, it is so clean. I remember sort of 4 months into living in Japan, I saw a piece of trash on a railway station. And, obviously in any European city, if you see some trash on a railway station, it's nothing. It's just every day. But I was so shocked. I was like, oh, what happened here? I was like, because it's so clean. Japan is just so amazingly clean. And in many ways, it is a fantastic place to live. Japanese food is great. And what I think we don't always appreciate in Europe is how diverse Japanese food is. Because obviously everyone knows sushi, but there's also teriyaki, Japanese curries, fantastic fruit. So it's really like you could really eat it forever. There's loads of great sites in the like greater Tokyo area. Japanese people, when they don't work for Nova, are really nice.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's a great place.
Right. So did you go from Japan then to Serbia, or was there
No,
somewhere in the middle?
two places. After Japan, I moved to Thailand, and I was in Thailand for half a year, which actually was a mistake looking back. Thailand is a fantastic country, and I wish I had stayed for longer. And then I moved to Georgia, which I would recommend for a holiday.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's if you go for a holiday, I'm going to start by saying like some nice things about Georgia. It has beautiful mountains, beautiful seaside. Tbilisi, the capital, is great.
Mhm.
Um, and the food is lovely. People are very friendly. My school was so awful.
Uh-huh.
I cannot even begin. It was I was working there as a volunteer. Mikhail Saakashvili started this volunteer program, I think 2009, 2010, to bring in Western volunteers to work in Georgian schools. The official explanation of the program is that Georgian teachers were not really able to teach English, partially because their methods were still quite old-fashioned, and partially because, generally speaking, they were Russian teachers who switched to English after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And they were, I believe, very good at Russian, but like if you yourself had to suddenly become a German teacher, or I had to suddenly become a Italian teacher,
Mhm.
it would be hard. And like we wouldn't be as good as we are at teaching English. The like conspiracy theory explanation is that this program was set up just after the Russian invasion. And it was a way of putting citizens of NATO countries into harm's way because they
Uh-huh.
put us like loads of villages and like loads of strategic targets if the Russians invaded more of Georgia, so that the NATO countries would have to be involved. Um, but either way, it was really like the kind of the Wild West, we could say.
Okay. Interesting.
My my school had only electricity in one room, no central heating. We just would like burn wood in like little metal boxes in the classrooms for heat. There was no water in the school. There was like some holes in like a hut outside for the toilet, but also no water. And we had like a tap in our playground that we shared with animals. So sometimes you
Uh,
would go and like try to refill your water bottle, but like a goat was drinking from the tap, so you had to come back later. So it was pretty rough.
wow.
Um, and then I ended up in Serbia, which, as I say, we already discussed this bit. I had a very good experience, but I wanted to be a proper grown up and have a bit more of a career, which is why I came to Poland.
Okay, interesting. It sounds like you've had some, let's say, unusual experiences, but it sounds like it's been an adventure for sure,
Yeah,
because going from Japan and you had this first bad experience, but in
mhm,
comparison, it sounds like
mhm.
Japan was absolutely fantastic. And
Absolutely. I would really recommend, like, if anyone is considering moving to Japan, I think probably your previous guest said the same thing. I would really recommend going for it. If you want to go to a country with a culture which is very different from European culture, but also is very safe, has very good like healthcare, low crime, everything functions extremely well. I think Japan is a perfect place to go.
exactly, awesome. And I have to agree that Thailand, like I went to Thailand in the past, and it's
Mhm,
absolutely beautiful as a country.
mhm.
There's such a wide variety of different landscapes and food and things to see. So yeah, if I hadn't moved to Spain many
Mhm.
years ago, maybe I would have moved to Thailand. Who knows? But
Mhm.
guessing learning Thai would be very, very, very complicated. So, that being said, let's speak about Polish, that I
Mhm.
imagine is pretty tricky too. How did you learn it and how do you maintain it at the moment?
Sure. So I would say, firstly, it depends a little bit on who you are. There's a lot of Ukrainians in Poland, and the grammar and many of the words of Slavic languages are quite similar. So the Ukrainians living in Poland learn Polish really well. Of course, they do make a big effort, but what they are able to achieve is really impressive.
Mhm.
And then we come to me. So for me, I suppose my Polish level is like high A2, almost B1. I'm not going to start speaking Polish because it's really annoying when people
Uh-huh.
start to speak a foreign language to someone who doesn't understand to demonstrate how good they are at that language.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but um, I'm able to kind of function day to day. So, like, shops, something more sophisticated, like taking my daughter to preschool. I can talk to them if there's a problem or something. But something legal or something medical would probably be beyond my level, that kind of level, I would say I'm at. And honestly, it is an uphill struggle. Sometimes I do feel a little bit jealous of people living in Western European countries, of how I feel my level could be if I was learning a different language.
Mhm.
But that said, I don't want to, like, be negative. I really like the sound of Polish. The grammatical structure is very hard, but it's kind of cool. And the way you can kind of create meaning by using different prefixes or suffixes is really cool.
It's interesting because I've never tried to learn a so-called difficult foreign language. I've always gone for the easier options, which are still really, really hard to master and become fluent in.
Yeah.
And usually I'm giving lots of tips to people who are studying English and trying to improve their English. I'm always telling them to immerse themselves in the language, to use it at every option. If they're
Mhm.
ever curious about what a word is, you've always
Mhm.
got your phone next to you. You can look up the word and you can listen to
Mhm.
podcasts, you can watch series, you can follow all of these people on social media and on YouTube. Like, I give out so many tips and
Mhm.
pieces of advice to people to
Mhm.
improve their English. But then it's hard to actually do these things yourself when it comes to languages that you're learning. Like,
Sure.
I've been living in Brussels now on and off for a couple of years. And for the first 6 months, I was really motivated at getting good at French.
Mhm.
And I already had the advantage of speaking Spanish, knowing a bit of Italian, being English. So it wasn't a huge kind of learning curve. But
Mhm.
even still, when I don't
Yeah.
need to use it on a daily basis, I struggle to find motivation to actually speak. Maybe not to listen, but to speak. So basically, all of this brings me to, like, what do you do to try and work on your Polish? And are there things that you don't mind doing, like listening to podcasts, and things that you
Mhm.
really kind of dread doing, like, I don't know, speaking to people when you have an injury?
Mhm. So, first, I wanted to say that, like, I think you kind of touched on a really important point, which is how much you need a foreign language. So, I would imagine that in Brussels, the level of English is really, really high, and actually, the foreign population that speak English but don't necessarily speak French is really big.
Yeah.
And in Warsaw, it's very similar. The level of English in Warsaw is really, really high. I mean, I would say that practically speaking, I actually could do 99% of things without speaking Polish. Um, and actually, I remember that when I worked in Belgrade, my boss used to work at the British Embassy, and she told me that when the ambassadors would come to Belgrade, first they would have to go and live in a random village in Serbia. Because same situation in Belgrade, many people speak English, it's not a problem, you can do everything you need. So you had to go to a village where no one could speak English and just like survive for a month before you could get the job.
Mm-hmm.
I would say getting classes is a good thing because firstly, because classes teach you, but also when you invest time and money, and when you know that there's someone you're going to see every week who will kind of hold you accountable, that's really useful. I also agree with you that like there is so many great resources online available today. We're both English teachers who post a lot on Instagram, you post a lot on YouTube. And it's the same with Polish. Like there's some really good Polish teachers posting on Instagram as well. So there's a lot of options today, I would say.
Exactly. No, it's interesting about what you mentioned about the need of really speaking another language, because as you said, in Warsaw and in Brussels, to be honest, this is maybe the curse of being English or a native English speaker, that usually we don't have any real need to learn other languages. And of course, this is a very lazy way of looking at things, but it's the truth that most people around the world learn and study English and are able to get by in English. So this is the problem that many British people, for example, think like, why should I learn another language? What's the point? Everybody speaks English. And I don't like this way of thinking, but it is kind of true.
I completely agree. If I compare two countries I used to live in, Japan and Serbia, you might expect that Japanese people could speak much better English because the education system is generally better and because they have much more resources available to them than Serbs do. But in fact, Serbs speak English much, much better than Japanese people. And a big part of that is just the fact that Japanese people don't really need English. Like, you can join a company like Toyota or Honda or SoftBank and have an amazing career only speaking Japanese. You can go on holiday with a Japanese tour guide, and again, you only need Japanese. Whereas if you are Serbian, maybe you want to work abroad, maybe you want to work with an international company based in Serbia, but there's just going to be much, much fewer opportunities for you if you don't speak English, which is a huge motivator.
No, 100%, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Now, speaking about learning languages, I know that you have two young children. I myself, I do not have any children. I do have a nephew, and I can see that my sister is going through this whole process now with a little baby, and she's very busy. She doesn't sleep a lot, and she's matured very quickly in the space of the last year. So first I want to know about you. How was your experience of the first year or two of becoming a dad? How did it change you and your routine?
That's a good question. I mean, so I would say when you first have a baby, it's very, very time consuming. Honestly, you can't do so much because you have a schedule of like nap times and feeding times and that kind of thing. But then your kid gets a bit older, your kid becomes able to do more stuff, and you also are able to do more stuff then. And also you just get like used to it. Like when, you know, my first daughter, Clara, was born, we were like, oh my God, this is so much responsibility.
Panic stations.
Exactly. And then, you know, today I'm like, you know, Clara and I go on the trampoline together and see who can like push each other over the most times. So it's
responsibility. That is responsibility.
yeah. So it's like, you know, you get, I would say, more freedom in what you can do by yourself, and also what you can do with your kid and what you can show your kid. You know, like you can take them to have new experiences and you can watch their reaction, and that is really wonderful.
Right. And am I right in thinking that your eldest daughter also speaks English and Polish?
Yeah, so we live in Warsaw. I speak to my daughters in English. I should just say it's not that my younger daughter only speaks Polish. She's 9 months old, so she doesn't speak any language. But I suppose she will be bilingual when she grows up as well. So I speak to my daughters in English. My wife speaks to them in Polish. And we speak together as a family in English, but then, of course, outside of home, my daughters hear Polish mostly with, for example, in preschool or with my wife's family or that kind of thing. So overall, I would say my older daughter is slightly better at Polish, but she speaks both languages really very well.
Right. Now, are there any challenges when it comes to raising your children as being bilingual? Because I remember decades ago, it was thought and believed that it was actually a negative thing for a child to grow up as being bilingual. And now, since then, things have changed and like public opinion has also changed. But in your personal experience, have there been any difficulties?
I mean, extremely small ones. Like sometimes my daughter will ask me for something, but she doesn't know the English word, so she'll use a Polish word, and I don't know the Polish word. So, for example, a while ago, she said to me, "Daddy, give me poduszkę." And I said, like, sure, but what's a poduszkę? And
push on the trampoline.
It's actually a pillow. But you know, we had like a whole back and forth. Or I can give you like, this isn't a problem, but I can give you like a funny example. The Polish word for give me is die. So she said to me, "Daddy, will you die for me?" And I was like, yeah. Yeah. And she's like,
you so much, of course.
yeah, exactly. And I was like, wow, this is more serious than our usual conversations. You usually just want to make jokes about thoughts or something. And she's like, yes, will you die for me? And I was like, yeah, buddy. Yeah. And she's like, Daddy, will you die for me those blocks? And the whole time she had just been asking for some toy.
Okay. Phew, thank God, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it sounds interesting and good for you for raising them like this. And I'm sure in the future they will realize like what you did for them, and they'll be very grateful, because being bilingual from birth essentially is a huge advantage, in my opinion.
To be honest, though, I would say it would take more effort not to raise our kids as bilingual. I mean, sometimes I talk to Polish parents whose kids can only speak Polish, or they're learning English, but you know, as someone who learns English as a foreign language, their level is much lower than Clara. And I can see that they feel bad or they feel like worse parents.
Mhm.
But it's not that I make a huge effort. English is my first language. The like natural lazy thing for me to do is speak to my daughters in my first language. It would actually take much more effort to speak to them in Polish, which I don't speak that well. It just, I think, happens that when two people don't have the same first language, it's much easier to raise your kids to be bilingual than in other situations.
No, exactly. Good. So yeah, I was giving you a compliment, and now you're coming back and saying that you're just lazy after all.
That was a very British. Sorry, are you there?
Yeah, still here,
Sorry,
still here. Don't worry.
yeah, that was a very British response to your compliments.
Exactly. It's like, no, I'm just a lazy man.
No, I recognize your compliments and I do not accept it.
Awesome. Now, speaking about very British things, let's finish off this conversation with some random conversation questions in which each one contains something related to the United Kingdom or British slang or British stereotypes. So
Great.
we'll kick off with queuing. Brits are known for being very good at queuing and taking it very, very seriously. And to queue is to make a line when you're about to pay for something, for example. So, are you a good queuer? And do you get offended when other people like jump in the queue?
Absolutely. But I would say I don't know if you would agree with me, but queuing well only works when other people are queuing well.
It's a fine art.
It's like a kind of prisoner's dilemma, like if you have reason to believe the other person is going to jump ahead of you, you have to like get defensive, like look around, like which is sad because when I'm in a queue, what I really want to do is kind of just go on my phone and like ignore the world. And it turns queuing into a much more stressful activity when you can't like be secure in like the other people will respect the queue. So I agree, it's important.
It's a fine art, queuing.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. And another thing, the word peckish is a very British way of saying a little bit hungry. So right now I've already had lunch, but I'm getting a little bit peckish. So in your case, what is your go-to comfort food or option when you're feeling a little bit peckish? What do you normally eat?
I wish I had a more exciting answer for you, but I'm gonna say cereal. I like to like microwave frozen fruit and like make a big pile and then add some cereal and milk. And it takes like 5 seconds. It's really affordable and it's really healthy and it's just great. How about you?
Well, cereal's a good option for sure. Like usually I try to pretend that I'm healthy and get like muesli. And then if I don't have milk, I'll just like grab a spoon and then start eating the muesli directly from the box. But if not, yeah. If not, I don't know. Crisps are always very Moorish and very addictive.
Yeah.
In particular, if you've got like some dips with you, like some hummus or some guacamole, some kind of like.
Then it counts as a health food if you have it with hummus.
Exactly. Anything with hummus is healthy. Whether you're having it with like Doritos or carrot, equally healthy.
Chocolate.
Yeah.
Cyanide. So good.
It's all good. Everything works. Awesome. Okay, another question. If you were to go on holiday with your family in the UK for 1 week, where would you go?
That's a really tough question. We visited my aunt and uncle who live in Chester, which is close to Liverpool, last year. And it really made me realize how many fantastic places there are in the UK. Because, Chester is lovely. It's really historical and medieval. Then we were in Liverpool, which was my first time I've ever been there. And I was very impressed by by how beautiful the city is, by how friendly people were. And we went to the north of Wales for a little bit as well, which is like, I think internationally, no one thinks about Wales. I think if you would ask most foreign people, they wouldn't associate Wales with anything. But that's really a shame because Wales is a beautiful place. They have wonderful mountains, really beautiful scenery. It's really a shame that it's not better known. I realize I have not answered your question. So
Maybe
honestly,
Chester or maybe Wales, I guess. I don't know.
I'm going to say back home. I'm going to say I would go back to Scotland. I love Edinburgh. I lived there for 4 years and up into the mountains for a bit, to the sea as well. That would be my answer. How about you?
Hmm. I mean, Scotland's beautiful if I want countryside and mountains and to kind of
Mhm.
escape from reality, so to speak. But to be honest, I haven't been to London for what
Mhm.
seems like a long period of time. And I
Mhm.
have friends from uni who live there, a couple of friends from home who live there. And now it's kind of easy to get there. I don't even need to fly. If I'm
Mhm.
going from Brussels, I can get the Eurostar and I can be there in like 2.5 hours. So I think I might go to London for like a long weekend at some
Mhm.
point in the next couple of months, but I wouldn't want to be there for more than that. Like
Mhm.
more than like 4 days in London for me, it just stresses me out. Maybe I prefer smaller, more chilled places, but
Yeah.
a
No,
trip to London is on the cards.
I understand. I had this feeling about Tokyo as well, that it's so hard to leave, It's so big.
100%. Now, final question.
Mhm.
As you may have noticed, I like food, and I asked
Mhm.
you about being peckish earlier. Now,
Mhm.
when it comes to typically English or British dishes,
Mhm.
what is your favorite?
I love fish and chips. I miss fish and chips so much. But I also think, in the UK, we have the best pies in the world. I think our pies are very underrated. And finally, oh no, I can't not finally. I think British breakfasts are also very good. I think British cuisine in general is very underrated. And of course, a lot of people don't notice, but the tikka masala is Scottish. It is not Indian or Pakistani, despite what some people will tell you. So, okay, gun to my head, I'm going to go with pie.
Okay,
Like
interesting.
savory pie. That's lovely. How about you?
Oh, I haven't had a good pie in a while, but I never really crave it. I never have the feeling of like, oh, I could murder a steak pie
No?
and some mashed potatoes.
Okay, like old-fashioned pub, pie, pint. That's the best life can be.
I mean, it's true. Like maybe you're convincing me a little bit in a pub with a pint with a nice homemade pie. It is really good. But right now, speaking about mashed potato, I'm
Mhm.
starting to fancy some shepherd's pie or cottage pie,
Outstanding.
which isn't too dissimilar because
Mhm.
it's very savory, very meaty. For
It
those
has
of you
a great
who
name.
are unaware, a shepherd's pie or cottage pie, they're practically the same. And it is minced meat. Shepherd's pie is with lamb mince. Cottage
Mhm.
pie is with beef mince, uh, which is kind of stewed with celery, tomato, onion, maybe some garlic. And then on top, you've got a layer of really creamy mashed potato. And then
Mhm.
finally, you finish it off with some grated cheese. And then you put it in the oven. And
Mhm.
it's just major comfort food. When the
Outs-
weather isn't good, it's just like a big hug, really.
Now I'm so nostalgic for British food.
So great. Now you're not peckish anymore. You're starving.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Yeah, I really am.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll call it a day there. We'll end there today. We've been speaking for 40 minutes, more or less. about you, your life, how you traveled around and had some unusual teaching experiences in some, out of the ordinary places. Before moving on to Poland, learning Polish, and finishing off with some British conversation, some quintessential British stuff.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
The pleasure was all mine. And enjoy the rest of your day. And if you want to ask us any questions here, just leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation in the comments. So thanks again, Alex. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.